Hello, friends. Happy Halloween to you and your families. This morning, my daughter woke up and asked me what I was going to be for Halloween. And when I wasn't quick enough to answer, she said, "Dad, you look like the same age as Grandpa. You should dress up like him." So, needless to say, Halloween is alive and well in our family. In fact, I want to share with you two stories that I think connect with what we're studying this week and might provide some action for us. Two horror stories, mild horror stories. The first one, a couple of years ago, my wife and I were able to go on a cruise, first and only cruise I've ever been on. And one of the nights I walked away from all of the activities on the boat, out onto the deck and away from the lights. And I just looked down in the water. On that particular night, it was overcast. There was no moon. I couldn't see any stars, and it was dark. And as I looked down in the water, I had the terrifying thought, if I fell overboard right now, no one would hear me, no one would see me, and I would tread water in this pitch blackness until I drown or get eaten by a shark. And that gave me a whole new fear to carry around for months and years after that. Now, nothing happened, of course, but that's what went through my head as I read the words of Joseph Smith this week that he writes in section 127, his description of what he's feeling like and his point of life right here. He says in verse 2, "Deep water is what I am wont to swim in." Now, if you know the background of section 127, you know that Joseph Smith has been accused falsely again of attempted assassination of former Governor Boggs in Missouri. And so he's being hunted by people in Missouri to make him stand trial for something. And he knows he's not going to get a fair trial. And so he's hiding. Part of his predicament is caused because people that should be his friends have turned against him. The mayor of Nauvoo is one of them. And amidst all that betrayal and uncertainty, the prophet writes sections 127 and 128. Now, if you've been following along in our trainings, you know that the first step in the learning pattern is establishing a context that's relevant to students. You could share a lot of details about this background, but it might be most powerful to help them see that they can resonate with what it feels like to swim in deep water. They know what it feels like to be uncertain about friends and relationships, to feel bogged down or alone, to feel like they might be drowning. For that point, we feel the same thing. We can resonate with that. Teaching seminary is one of the most potentially isolating and lonely callings in the church. There's a lot of responsibility and sometimes a lot of stress that goes along with it. So whether it's our students or ourselves, I think the emotions attached to the study this week are poignant. I think it's powerful to note that amidst that, Joseph Smith stays incredibly optimistic. Listen to the beginning of verse 2 in section 127. "As for the perils which I am called to pass through, they seem but a small thing to me." And at the end of section 128, what do we hear in the gospel we have received? A voice of gladness, a voice of mercy from heaven, a voice of truth out of the earth, glad tidings for the dead, a voice of gladness for the living and the dead, glad tidings of great joy. It's impressive to me that Joseph was able to remain his hope and his optimism. And I think a fabulous thing to study with students this week is how we can do that same thing. Now, you'll have many discussions with questions like that, experiences shared with students to help them feel and act on what they're learning. But I want to suggest just one principle. At the end of verse 21 in section 128, the Lord says, as he does in other places, that he gives us truth line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little and there a little. That part we know. But then he explains the promise or the blessing that comes because of that action. He gives us consolation by holding forth that which is to come, confirming our hope. And then Joseph asks prophetically, "Brethren, shall we not go on in so great a cause?" Now, it could be a bit of a stretch, but as I read the words line upon line, I thought, of course, of the truth that God gives us truth line upon line, bits and pieces. He doesn't give us everything all at once. I also thought, however, of the importance it is for us to regularly align ourselves with that line by line instruction and revelation that the Lord gives us. And here's my second story. Last year, my family and I were driving to the coast, and About an hour or so into our drive, we heard this horrible grinding from outside of our car. And we pulled over and checked and couldn't see anything, tried to drive again, but the grinding just continued. And it's getting dark. Our kids are crying. Mom and dad are frustrated. Finally, we find a mechanic that is willing to house our car for the night and then look at it in the morning. We have to find a random hotel. And when we go back the next morning, he tells us our brakes have to be completely repaired, which of course is in itself a horror story. And when I asked him why, because we just had the brakes worked on a little while ago, he said that because our wheels were out of alignment, it created extra wear on the wheels and on the brakes. Now, I'm not a mechanic. I don't understand how that works. But it impressed me as I thought about it later on, once the frustration left, of how something so small, regular alignment, could play such a big part in our family's experience. In fact, as I've come to learn, alignment does three things. It keeps us safe, it improves our longevity, and it increases our comfort. I think similar to a car, we as teachers need regular alignment. Because seminary teaching can be such a demanding calling and at times can be so isolating and lonely, it's important that we regularly align so that we can be safe, so that we can have prolonged ability to serve, and so that we can be comfortable, or maybe better said, peaceful, and experience the spirit the Lord provides to his teachers and his students. To do that in our area, we have a couple of different things that are asked of us as teachers to regularly align with. The first is the weekly announcement, which you're participating in by watching this video. The second is weekly participation in our current training. Now, each month we have a training, but that training has multiple pages involved in it. You can, of course, do all of them at once, but it's usually a better suggestion to pick a time regularly during the week where you set aside about 10 minutes of time to participate in that training. Those trainings help us to align with divinely appointed principles and practices that are set apart for our use by prophets and apostles. It helps us to align with the Board of Education, the chair of which is President Nelson himself. It also improves our experience in the classroom. It can shorten our preparation time. It can help us to feel more peace and calm, and it can dramatically help the experience of our students. So brothers and sisters, if you do not already have a regular habit of participating in these trainings, I'd invite you to do so today. Participate in the training today that's linked right below here. And if you want to catch up on past experiences, then please do so. There's some great resources and great comments there. Please participate in the discussions. Share your thoughts, even if you feel like you have nothing to share. Share your questions. Other people are listening to what you're reading, what you write, and are as interested as you are in getting good ideas from other people. As you do that, you will regularly align. You'll be safe. You'll improve your longevity and ability to serve, and the Spirit of the Lord will be with you and with your students. Brothers and sisters, God bless you in all that you do. Have a wonderful week.